This week, we're going to talk about something most of us don't want to talk about at all. Conflict. Do you like conflict? You probably don't mind talking about it. I just don't want to have it. Now, when I say conflict, I'm not talking about arguing. Proverbs 17:19 says, the person who loves a quarrel or loves to argue loves sin. They like to divide. They like to tear others down. They like to beat others up. We're not talking about that. We're not talking about even really having conflict. We're talking about resolving conflict. Fools love to have conflict. Proverbs 18:2 says, the fool has no interest in understanding. They only want to air their own opinions. We're not talking about that kind of perspective. In fact, when arguing with a fool, be careful you're not doing the same thing. Why? Because a fool will drag you down to their level and they'll beat you with experience. That kind of conflict wears us out. That kind of conflict wears us down. That kind of conflict destroys relationships. We're talking about the kind of conflict that gets resolved. No one should love conflict, but all of us should love to see conflict resolved. But most of us don't feel very equipped to do so. Did you know that Jesus didn't have that perspective? In fact, Jesus wanted his followers to be absolutely equipped and adept at navigating through conflict to the other side for healthy, loving, trusting relationships. What happens most of the time when conflict goes wrong is trust gets broken. It gets injured and maybe even destroyed. Oftentimes, trust is destroyed because of deception. Many times, trust is injured because of misunderstandings. And sometimes, trust erodes because of neglect. We're going to talk this week about how to build trust in relationships. And what we see in the life of Abraham in Genesis chapter 21, is we see God using conflict to form his character. And it's what God wants to do for you and I as well. In fact, conflict can sometimes be the most catalytic thing to develop our character. When rather than ignore it, do nothing about it, or do something wrong about it, say things poorly, when we address it well and correctly, it can actually make us more like Jesus. And he had no fear of entering into conflict because he knew how to navigate it. You and I will learn 5 ways to navigate conflict this week. The truth is, whenever we cooperate with what God's doing in us, and we face things rather than sweep them under a rug or go around them or pretend they're not there, is we actually see God forming in us his character, the image of God being formed in us. Abraham had that experience. We're seeing Abraham move in a slow, transformational relationship with God and others. Because our relationship that's being formed in the image of Christ, is never a relationship that's just between God and me. It's a relationship between God and me and you. God always uses horizontal relationships to make me more like my vertical king. So this week, I want to encourage you, stick with me, read chapter 21, 22 through 34 of Genesis, and meditate and ask God, show me how I can learn how to navigate the difficult conversations in life. Because when we do, there's usually a friend, a closer friend, a more cherished friend on the other side. I'll see you tomorrow.